Huh?
Chris just stepped out. I don't know if you need him.
I don't really need it.
You guys are pretty close, huh?
Yeah.
A lot of room here.
Yeah, I guess there is. I don't want to get, I don't know how the meeting's gonna go yet, so I want to keep my distance in case I need to,
I want to put that in the minutes.
That's right, that's right. You know. If I like what you're saying, I'm
You guys don't get along?
7:30, Chief.
Chief. Force a habit still.
The Halloween keep, right?
Las Vegas reinstituted masks this weekend.
How are you good? Hollywood team, good?
What's that?
Hollywood team, you guys good?
Yeah, you're good.
All right, very good. All right, good evening, everyone. It's 7:30 on Monday, July 19th. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting was provided on January 5th, 2021, by sending written notice and electronic notice to the Courier News and the Star Ledger, posting on the website and the bulletin board in the municipal building, and filing with the township clerk. A subsequent notice with live stream information was provided on July 15th, 2001. If you wish to view this council meeting in live stream, you may do so. I actually made a shortener at bit.ly/Bridgewater Council, or you can go to https://webinar.ringcentral.com/j/1495345295. Or you can use that bit.ly that I just said. Or you can call in by dialing 1-646-357-3664. Webinar ID number 149-534-5295. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilman Hirsch,
Here.
Councilman Cordero,
Here.
Councilman O'Gara,
Here.
Councilman Ring,
Good evening here.
President Pedrosa.
Here, thank you. If you're able to stand, would you please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, well, this evening we have a very special ceremony. Item number 4 on our agenda is the oath of office for soon-to-be patrolman Jonathan T. Newnham. Chief, would you like to run this part of the program?
Welcome to our agency. I want you to know you have my full support, the support of my supervisors and my fellow officers.
Okay, well, welcome, Officer Newnham, and congratulations. I ditto everything the mayor said. Okay, moving on to item number 5, would be minutes for approval. However, I'm going to ask that we consider July 8th meetings for the next meeting. Moving on to Township Council reports. Councilman Kirsch.
Thank you, Mr. President. Only a few brief items tonight. The zoning board is scheduled to meet tomorrow night, planning board is scheduled to meet next week, and no other reports at this time.
Councilman Ring.
Thank you, Council President. Just one item. Last Monday, I was fortunate to attend a portion of a golf tournament held for the benefit of the Somerset Regional Animal Shelter. A resident of Hunterdon County, Donna Paroli, organizes a golf tournament. It's their 3rd year she's done it, with all proceeds benefiting the shelter. And all indications are they had a very successful event again this year. That's my report.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Orgalis.
Thanks, sir. I participated in the second quarter 2021 meeting of the Bridgewater Emergency Planning Committee. Participants included the Board of Education, police, and chemical industry. There is a continued emphasis on emergency operations plans to include evacuation plans for large building complexes, sheltering during emergency, and the development of civilian support groups. Council members have all received a copy of the 2020 municipal audit report from the external auditor. I have reviewed the comments and recommendations section as is required by the New Jersey State statute. I'm glad to report that there are no recommendations for improvements in any of our financial systems. That is very good news. Attended the training seminar given by Township Deputy Counsel Alex Fisher and the state requirements for compliance with the Open Public Records Act. It's a very complex issue with stringent requirements to adhere to the letter of the law regarding this act. There are substantial personal penalties for non-compliance by individual record keeping. That is my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Vice President Cardillo.
At this time, I have no report.
Thank you. Mayor.
Thank you, Council President. First of all, great to be back with the council. I know you guys have been back for 1 or 2 meetings. I was not able to join you, so this is my first meeting back. So thank you, Council President, for getting these meetings to be back in person again. And I know our zoning board has gone that way. Our planning board should be by the next meeting or 2. There was some notice issues in terms of pending applications, so we hope to be completely back, hopefully by the end of summer, no later than that. The couple items on the agenda we can talk more about, but a few things I wanted to highlight. So later on the budget, we have several resolutions regarding our road program. So this is 5 of the 6 road packages from the regions that we previously put out for bid. As the council knows, but certainly for the public who's here for their benefit or anybody listening, our road program this year was broken up into 6 segments for areas of town, so that way, sure each area of town received road work, and also to make sure that we could capitalize on efficiencies in bidding as well as in actually getting the construction done. And given the scope, the increased scope of our roadwork program this year, that was crucial to making sure we could manage the program. So I'm happy to report that 5 of the 6 bid packages are back and ready for awarding tonight. We'll go through some of the individual numbers, but they came back under what was estimated, which is great news. That means that we'll be able to either we're going to have more information soon about what we'll do with some of that efficiency and cost, but we're going to be able to do more road work. Hopefully, it will be done this year in addition. So we're working on that with the engineering department to put that capitalize on the savings that we saw from these bids. We have 1 more to go, which I assume will be on at the next council meeting, I assume, and then we'll be able to have the work starting, within a few weeks to get the road work done. We will do our best to make sure we coordinate around school openings or any events, and we will also make sure that on our RBW Road website as well as the township website, we'll have information about road closings. Some of that is dependent upon the contractor's schedules as to when they can get us done, but we will try to coordinate that as much as possible. A couple other quick things to update the council on. As you all know, I've been long advocating for an on-point type program This is where we are able to utilize the assistance of social workers to assist our police officers in providing services to at-risk residents, those who need help the most. We have been informed that we advocated to the county that they would work with us on this program. We've received confirmation that they have done that, and Bridgewater will be the pilot program that will hopefully start this fall, if not the beginning of next year. So we will be the pilot for that program, and we're very proud of, it's taken a long time to get this program moving, and we're happy to be able to roll that out here in Bridgewater. Last but not least, the state is instituting early voting for this year's general election. We have been informed that we will serve as one of the sites, the municipal building will serve as one of the sites for early voting. So thank you, Councilman Kirsch, and to our clerk, Linda Doyle, for advocating on behalf of our residents for this. And once we have more information on how early voting will work, then we'll be able to provide that for our residents in the fall. That is my report, other than discussing the budget.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 8, the 2021 municipal budget. We have 8A, resolution amending the 2021 introduced budget.
Thank you, Council President. We have our CFOs here if there's council has any questions, but this is an accounting issue. The state, in order to approve our budget, DCA has to review everything, and there's a $20,000 line item that needs to go from one column to another. Is that correct, Joe? Okay. But to do that, we have to amend the budget. So, Joe, what's the line item that's being moved to and from?
Surplus to the sewer capital fund balance.
Okay. So
Revenue
that's
stayed the same on that.
right. So that's the accounting issue that the state has identified, that we need to move that $20,000 in sewer.
And the net is the zero-sum gain. There's no change to the overall bottom line, correct?
That's correct.
So that will be something that the council will need to vote on to amend it before final adoption of the budget. But we made no other changes at all, substantive or otherwise, to the budget as introduced.
Mr. President, this is indeed a de minimis issue, one that technically DCA wants to do, and there's no stress in doing it. With that in mind, I move the adoption of 8A.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Great. Just for clarification, you just got notification from the DCA just when today or past? Today.
On today.
Right, today. And just for the record, the administration did call a meeting of the Budget Finance Committee, and Councilman Orgalis and I did attend that meeting with the two of you, and as well as Mr. Pappas, and we were presented this request this afternoon. There was a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? No? Roll call, please.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Padilla?
Yes,
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Pedrosa?
Yes. This is basically an accounting issue. It's the net, the end of the day, net balance is zero. There's no change in the overall budget, and has no impact to the Bridgewater taxpayer. All right, moving on to item number 8B, public hearing on the 2021 municipal budget. Is there a motion to open?
make that motion.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Anyone of the public wishing to address this council on the budget? By the way, just for the record, there will be a portion where we will open the meeting to the public in item number 9, where members of the public can address this council on any other general matter. But right now, please limit your comments to the budget. We usually provide about 2 minutes for comments.
I'm making my concession to age. I have to add the glasses to my face.
How are you, Mr. Bruckner?
I'm sorry?
How are you?
I'm doing fine, and you?
I'm well, thank you.
So I have a bunch of comments about the budget, but I really want to focus on the issue of debt. And the budget's a little confusing, and I'm not completely sure I have it right, so I appreciate being corrected on any of the details I get wrong. But on the 2021 budget, sheet 40D, which is the 6-year capital improvement program, or the 6-year capital program, there's a $7.6 million amount that's listed as being borrowed, bonds, out of an $8 million total. So $400,000 is being funded out of the budget and $7.6 million is being borrowed. On the one hand, it says this is the 6-year capital program. On the other hand, at the meeting last time when the budget was increased, or I guess it was in a press release after, Mayor Minch described it as the initial amount of $8 million. So it's my understanding that that $8 million is the first year worth of spending. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And of that, $7.6 million is being borrowed.
Right.
On sheet 27 of the budget, it shows $3.85 million of old debt being repaid in principal. So by my calculations, that means the township is increasing the amount of its debt by $3.65 million. Now, I understand that times are tough, and sometimes you have to do what you have to do. But this is a pattern. Every year, debt's been increasing. If you go back, and I think I left it back there, if you go back 9 years, the township's budget was about $15 million. I'm sorry, the township's debt was about $15 million less than it is now. And the township just keeps borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. It's really easy to brag about keeping the taxes low if all you're doing is kicking the can down the road. You're keeping taxes low on us so that our kids and grandkids can pay for what we're getting now. And I think it's just really irresponsible to be doing that way. Obviously, we all want to cut taxes. I mean, we all want to cut spending, and we don't really have access to the kind of information we need to know whether you're doing a good job. We can just assume you are. I know that you're fiscally conservative in that respect. But once you've decided what you have to spend, then you should be spending taxing what you're spending. I really don't believe in kicking the can down the road and forcing our future generations to pay. And just one other quick comment, if I can find it. Oh, yeah. The tax amount. Mayor Minch, you were very careful, and Councilman Norgalis, you were very careful as well, to say that there's no increase in this budget in the tax rate. That is accurate, but it hides the fact that there is a $1.5 million increase in the amount of money that the township is raising in taxes. I take it that the reason there's no increase in the rate is because ratables have gone up. That's the only explanation I can assume, and I see nods confirming that. So that means people's taxes are going up. I also assume that residential's gone up more than commercial, which that is not accurate. In any event.
You're at over 3 minutes.
I'm sorry?
You're over 3 minutes. I've been trying, yeah.
Can I just wrap up real quick?
Sure.
I just want to make the one final comment that Councilman Pedrosa, or Council President Pedrosa, I think in the future you need to be careful because you're quoted as saying, I am pleased that Mayor Minch has introduced a budget without a tax increase. And I think that's inaccurate. There is a tax increase. There's not a tax rate increase. But if you're going to hide behind that technicality, at least get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else who wishes to address the council on the budget? Good evening.
Good evening.
Name and address for the record.
Yes, I am Jill Gladstone, 25 Linville Lane, Bridgewater. My statements tonight are in the capacity as a resident and not as a member of the Bridgewater Raritan Board of Education. I've looked through the 2021 budget, and I see there's some huge increases without explanations. For example, human resource salary and wages increased $95,000, almost doubling last year's $111,000 to $206,000. Under other, in the same department, how can you go from $8,700 last year to $50,000 this year without communicating to the public what this is for? I think you owe it to the public to explain all the areas of the budget where there are massive increases and decreases. Secondly, I'm very concerned with what I see as a lack of planning with regard to the future. The total amount to be raised by taxes is $320,000, or 1.5% higher than last year's budget, but it is being spun by saying there's a 0% tax rate. The cost of government is increasing by about 6.5%. Under the general revenue section of the budget, you have a series of one-time events to pay for operations. A liquor license sale for just under $700,000, the sale of assets for $1.8 million, the American Rescue Plan, $2 million, and you're increasing surplus by $1.3 million. You're using billions of dollars of one-time windfalls to pay for the increased cost of government. What bothers me most is that I have not heard any of the council members mention the increased cost of government or how it's going to be managed for the future of our township. You claim to be watchdogs, yet you are silent on these issues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please come forward. Good evening. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Howard Teichman, 60 Fairmount Avenue. When I listened to what Mrs. Gladstone and Mr. Bruckner just said, the phrase smoke and mirrors comes to mind, because that's what your budget is, smoke and mirrors. The revenue is a bunch of one-time items, and it's obvious to anyone looking at it that next year, when the election is over, or when this election is over, there will be a tax increase, because there's no way you can avoid it. Because some of the money that you're supposedly raising through these one-time gimmicks is not going to be there. So obviously there's going to be a tax increase next year. But the following year, when there's another election, you'll try to paper it over as usual. And I think the lack of transparency is reflected on the difficulty that is presented to a citizen trying to find out about the budget. When I go on the township website, there's nothing on the budget on the front page. There's a search box, and when you put the word budget in, you know what you get? You get the fire district budget. I think you guys are trying to hide what really goes on here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hi.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Rue, and I'm at 373 Pond Road.
Thank you.
I come before you today as a citizen of Bridgewater. And usually I look at the budget, so it's not anything new that it's hard to understand. But I am concerned about these one-time occurrences that I see in the budget, like the 2.3 million, is it billion? Million, which is called American Release Fund. And are we going to have that again next year?
Yes, ma'am.
So how long are we going to have that?
Depends if we use it all next year. We have about another 2.3. We can use it all next year, or we can spread it out over 2 years, I believe. Joe can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
So this budget comes to the public without any notes for us ordinary people to understand. Like, I wondered what was the asset which we sold. But I do know it was the Redwood Inn. But I think we sold that asset for like $2.5 million. We bought it for $2.5 million. So we were really selling it at a loss. But things like that bother me. And I also get bothered by the amount of debt we are going into. Because with the debt comes covenants. And we have to make sure that we are always in compliance with our covenants. So I haven't seen any covenants, and you don't make it public. But I know when I worked at Verizon, I covered debt covenants. So I know if we were very careful not to be in any non-compliance with any of our debt. And we had a lot of debt. And I see, since I've been tracking the budget, just like I think Jeff said, it's continuing to go up, 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 up. And our interest is like 14% of our budget. So I caution the council to be more diligent on getting into debt, because I don't see in this budget anything that says that we are going to raise any kind of new revenue. Because we have two things, at least one thing, that we won't have next year. And I don't want to move from Bridgewater. I want to stay here. And I know that from the census that our population is decreasing. So that means the people who are going to stay may have to pay more money. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Franco, and I live at 766 Weemac Road. On the budget issues, Jill already addressed the question on human resources. I do have a question on the increases in financial administration, so my numbers are based upon the salaries and wages in addition to other expenses, because I understand certain roles were changed from employees to consultants. That increased 26.19%. Director of Finance increased 16.99%. Land Use Administration increased 42%. Zoning Board of Adjustments, 13%. Snow removal, which there was a major issue with, decreased by almost 20%, 19.28%. Maintenance of parks, which, I'm sorry, that's really important to the quality of life, which this council and this mayor talks about, decreases by 17.76%. Fire officials, I'm great with the fact that that's increased because I know that there's been a major issue with getting inspections done in this township. Health and Human Services is increasing by 15.95%. I don't understand why that would need to occur. And Public Health Services, I know last year was COVID. I know we have a contract for them this year, but why are we proposing to increase it by 79.31%? I don't know how many additional positions are being added. I don't know what positions are being eliminated, because that information is not being made publicly available to us. But as a resident of this township, I am very concerned that there's administrative costs that are being pumped up and services to the residents of this community that are going to decrease, like recreation, like the maintenance of our parks, which we have parks, which are not yet available. We have the Wemple Vaucher property, which we've never had a parking lot put in, which was supposed to be part of that. We have the YMCA property off of Osler, which is still not available to the public, and yet you're cutting the maintenance of parks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wish to address this governing body? Okay,
Move to close public input.
thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the public portion is closed. Any comments by the administration?
Sure, just a few comments, Council President. In general, we talked about the budget when we introduced it. We're incredibly proud of this budget. As everyone knows, this has been a tough 2 years. Bridgewater lost last year over $2 million of revenue as a result of COVID, mostly coming from hotel taxes, mall revenues. We've also saw last year, of course, a decrease in court revenues, a decrease in inspections, fees because of decreased construction. We're happy that some of those numbers came back. As the economy has improved, as COVID has let up, we've seen some of those numbers return. But the reality is that they're still not down, they're still not back up to where they were in pre-2020 timeframes. So like most municipalities and residents and businesses, we continue to struggle with a loss of revenue that came from sources, from those sources in particular. The mall continues to be an issue that we monitor closely. The hotels are getting better, but there again, businesses just aren't traveling, and hotel business, business travel is what drives our hotels in Bridgewater. So we were we used, with the council's support, had the foresight in order to find ways of making up that revenue, which we did last year through a variety of methods, and which we continue to do this year, and we'll continue to do for years, the next few years probably to come. So a couple quick highlights. This tax rate remains the same. We did not, there's no increase in tax rate. And we've had some residents that mentioned that they said that the taxes have gone up. The reality is that if your house was assessed at $500,000 last year and your house is assessed at $500,000 this year, you pay the same amount of taxes. That is keeping taxes even. That is what this budget does. We are collecting an additional $300,000 of overall revenue. That's because we have more people paying in. And as a whole, we also want to make sure that having our overall rateable base grow is exactly what you want as a community. That is what's reflective in the increase in our, the overall amount of money that's collected through taxation that was referenced by one of the residents. It's because we have a larger tax rateable base, which is exactly what we want. So if your house is assessed at the same amount of money, then this budget will not raise your taxes at a dollar. Now, the school district might raise your taxes, or the county might raise your taxes, but it won't be coming from Bridgewater Township. There was a reference made to debt. I think Mr. Bruckner mentioned it about the overall debt. I don't know if the residents, if he realized or not, but the debt has to be for capital improvements. That's our road program. So certainly, if we wanted to not do any roads this year, well, we could not do any debt. Conversely, if we wanted to pay for roads with cash, we could raise $7.5 million in taxes and, you know, talk about tax increase on the residents would be an extraordinary tax increase on the residents. So what we continue to do, which is what we outlined before, is it's a 5-year plan. We will continue to do, spend the $8 million a year on our roads. We will do that over 5 years. And with the rates of bonding, we will continue to, in large measure, bond that money. That's exactly what it's for. It's for long-term improvements, and that's what we're going to use it for. It's not for operating expenses. With regard to, but to the issue of debt, one of the things that we did this year is we issued refunding bonds so we could refinance some of the debt that we have. We also, in this budget, paid off some of the debt that we incurred last year. If the council remember, we did 2 things for our budget last year. One was we issued emergency bonds, which is a special appropriation that the state lets you do when you have an emergency like COVID. So in this year's budget, we're paying that off. So we don't have that in future years. We're also paying off our Social Security. If the council remember last year, in order to make our budget balance, the federal government allows you to spread out your Social Security payments over multiple years, which allowed us to take about $500,000 out of our budget last year, but we're paying it off entirely this year. We don't have to, but we're jumping ahead of it. So one of the residents was concerned that there was a I think it was about $1.5 million of what looked like increased spending this year, but those residents can rest easy because those are one-time expenditures to pay off the approximate $1.5 million of debt from last year. So those numbers will not appear in our budget next year. So at the end of the day, this budget will do exactly what we promised to do. It will deliver all the services that the residents require and that they want from us. We will continue to fund our road program, fund our police department, and continue to keep taxes from going up in Bridgewater. I have no further comment unless the council has questions for me or for Mr. Pappas or for our CFOs who are here.
I do not. Any other comments?
I know there was a question raised about number of employees and headcount. This was actually something I had surfaced as one of my questions, and for the public, we are remaining flat at 180 full-time, or the equivalent of 184 full-time employees, and I see Joe shaking his head yes, so.
Which, by the way, is down from where it was in previous years. So we continue.
But flat from 2020 to 2021.
Mr. President, a few comments, if I may?
Sure.
So to the point on employee headcount, 2019 final adopted budget was 206 full-time, 34 part-time. And then last year's budget and this year's budget, 184 full-time. Last year's budget, 23 part-time. This year, 22 part-time. So we'll call that essentially the same. But it did reflect what I would call the right sizing of government that we did with last year's budget. Now, that right sizing occurred obviously with a pandemic hanging over us. But what impresses me about this budget is that we maintained the right sizing of government that was done between 2019 and 2020. A few other numbers that jump out at me, and I guess I want to make sure that I don't misstep in any way in my understanding. The tax rate, the local tax rate, remains 23.83 cents year 2020 compared to 2021. However, the total tax rate being paid, essentially the total cost of ownership of being a taxpayer in Bridgewater, goes from $2.1032 to $2.1132, which is an increase of 0.47%. Obviously, in my role as a council member, I've been most concerned about our budget and its impact on our residents. But after tonight, I will certainly be focusing particularly great attention on where, why, and how the other taxing authorities don't seem to have followed the same principle that we did. Because ultimately, if the total tax rate went up, you know, a full penny, which represents 0.47%, somebody somewhere has raised the rate. We have not. So that's certainly something to look into. I know earlier this evening there was a question about the split, or there was a reference to the split between residential and commercial. In 2020, that number was 72.35% on the residential side. This year, 72.46. So those numbers very similar. You know, a slight movement toward a greater amount coming from the residential side. Another couple of numbers that jump out. Some of these were discussed. We did make the initial investment of $8 million in roads. That will ultimately be for the good of our entire township, and I think ultimately will also reduce the cost that we could have to bear if we let our roads deteriorate even further. By taking this action, we are stopping the deterioration in its tracks. Moving in an alternate direction could result in an even greater investment required years down the road. Another thing that is part of this budget, I know it's small, but I think it's meaningful. There is $100,000 in capital improvement intended for this room, including, but potentially not limited to, sound system, being able to broadcast even more effectively, and potentially being able to display information, which is particularly important for our land use boards. Some importance for our work here, but particularly critical for land use boards when there are different exhibits and other information being shared. So I'm very proud of this budget. I think it is obviously difficult times. We are in the second year of what hopefully is no more than a 3-year period of significant impact from COVID. Obviously, I'm only speaking on the financial side. You know, the personal impact of COVID is immeasurable. But just looking at it from the financial side, this is the second of what is hopefully 3 years. It could be more. We have $2.3 million coming from the federal government. That, of course, is the money that is being returned to us from people's hard-earned paychecks, the residents of our township. We are getting $2.3 million this year. It's expected we're going to get $2.3 million next year. There is a major string attached with that, though. The major string attached with that is that we are unable to reduce our tax rate. We are not required to increase it, but we are also not permitted to reduce it. So in more normal times, this conversation might be very different, but essentially our tax rate was struck for us by the strings attached to that federal money, which is obviously critical, particularly given the amount. And just final item I want to point out, there is a line item, it's relatively small but still important. We, Bridgewater Township, pay $448,293 for our 16,790 households for recycling. It is a contract with the County of Somerset. It is a service provided by the County of Somerset. It's a bill that we get. And the reason why that's important is it was $448. Let's just call it that as a round number. Last year it was $408. So we opened our doors on January 1st, and the first thing essentially that greeted our administration was a $40,000 bill, 9.74% increase. And with our desire to keep taxes low, with our desire to have as limited of an impact as possible on our residents, you know, we were really put in a difficult place literally the first day that we opened our doors. I know sometimes the county likes to present money to the different municipalities, and certainly when that happens, that's appreciated. I think in this case, they presented us with a pretty big bill. So all in all, I'm very pleased with the budget. I want to compliment our CFO team compliment our budget committee, compliment our administrator, our mayor, and I'm confident that this is the right path forward for 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to move the adoption of the budget for 2021.
I just have I guess, a couple of very brief comments. First of all, I'm pleased to see so many members of the Democratic Party here tonight. I appreciate your comments. They're equally as important as anybody else. But a couple of things that I personally take note on. I don't appreciate, the chair of Democratic Organization says that we have our budget is smoke and mirrors. I don't really appreciate that, and the reason is that I've personally taken a great priority as council president to have an open and transparent government. Everything we do is on the public. Make sure that things are appropriately noticed to the public. The budget is an open process, and so I just don't think that's very fair. I think the budget is what it is. Now, you may find the budget confusing, and it certainly is confusing to the average folk to go through a budget of that type. The budget is complex. It takes a lot of time and work to understand it. But the budget that you have is very little different from the budget that I have, and I managed to understand the budget. I've been doing this now for, I don't know, almost 10 years, and it's a difficult task. It requires a lot of time, a lot of effort, and so we're here to answer your questions, by the way. I got to say, at no point in time did I receive an email. I don't think the Budget Finance Committee received an email from anyone. Actually, not a single member of the public sent us an email, including you guys here tonight, asking us any questions, and we certainly would have responded and answered your questions to the full extent that we could and provide that information to you. But there was really no effort by any one of you guys here, current and past political candidates that are here from the Democratic Organization could have reached out to us and asked us those questions, and we would answer them to you. I'm proud of our budget. I'm proud of our process. We have a very open process here in Bridgewater Township. We have a budget finance committee that sits down with the administration. And by the way, thank you, Mayor Mensch, for your openness, your transparency, your willingness to work with us, and having, not just you, but providing that leadership to your staff. They've been extremely helpful. In prior administrations, we had some difficulties in getting things resolved, but you certainly have made an effort to work very closely with us, and it's really a back and forth process, as it should be. And because of that, we're able to really produce a very effective and efficient budget. And so after the Budget Finance Committee works with the administration on trying to produce the budget, then it's introduced by the administration to this governing body in an open meeting. The public is aware of it. And then this governing body has a chance to review the budget, look it over, ask questions. As they do, their questions are then answered, and we come back here. We have a public hearing, and I certainly appreciate all of your input and all of your comments. Any member of the public is willing to come here and speak and address this governing body on any topics that they may wish, or any comments that they may have. The fact is that 4 out of 5 of the people that spoke here tonight are either political candidates or leaders in the Democratic Organization. So that fact cannot just go without being overlooked. But having said that, my point is that the budget process here in Bridgewater Township is very open to the members of the public. So when it comes to why certain items in the budget are increased or decreased, I mean it's really based on a need basis. The budget, we don't just cut departments or increase amounts in departments. arbitrarily. They are done because there is a need based in the budget to do so. I have, over the many years that I've served on the Budget Finance Committee, it's been a priority of mine that the budget is as lean as it can be, that not a single penny is overspent, and that the amount that's budgeted is the amount that's needed. And if anyone knows me, they know that that has been a priority of mine since the beginning. I'm also proud that over the years, this governing body has been able to, in fact, lower our budget. Bridgewater Township, over the past several years, has been able to decrease its tax rate to the point of having it the lowest tax rate in Somerset County. And that's really through the work that this governing body has done. So I'm very proud of that, that this council has prioritized keeping as much money in the taxpayer's pocket and not taking it for the government use. So that's really, besides that, I mean, when it comes to this year's budget, it's been challenging for us. We had to be able to produce a budget that doesn't produce an increase in the tax rate to the Bridgewater resident. And so I think, all things considering, the economics that exist, I think it's an excellent budget. And so I strongly support the budget. You want to make a motion?
So moved.
So, all right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cordero?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President DeRosa?
Yes. All right. Moving on to item number 9, meeting open to the public. Is there a motion to open to the public?
I'll make that motion to open to the public.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, members of the public wishing to address the council on any matter will be allowed 2 minutes to speak unless there are unusual circumstances. Welcome back.
Thank you. I realized as everyone else introduced themselves at public comment, I'm out of practice. I didn't give my name and address. I know you all know who I am, but
That's my bad. I should have caught you on
should have-
that.
you should have nailed me to the wall for it.
I should have caught you. So go ahead. Name and address for the record.
Jeffrey Bruckner, 60 Nicole Terrace. I just want to respond briefly to Councilman Kirsch's comments where he said that we should be looking at other taxing authorities for the increases. And I want to point out 3 differences. I don't know much about the county budget. I've never really been involved in it, but I was on the Board of Ed for the better part of 13 years, so I'm very familiar with that budget. And I want to say first and foremost, the Board of Ed does what I've always considered to be the only responsible way to go. Analogous to the roads that the township does, we have roofs and boilers that every 20 or 30 years have to be replaced, just like a road. You're not putting in new roads, you're replacing existing roads. That is not the type of item you borrow for. The Board of Ed pays for every single $1 million road and every single $800,000 boiler out of its current budget. They do not borrow for those amounts. And that is what this council should be doing to the extent possible. I understand it's not always possible, and you do have the luxury of it being legal for you to borrow without having to get voter approval, which the Board of Ed does not have. But I think you abuse that privilege to the extent that you do it so much. Second of all, as a result of that, I mentioned earlier that your debt has gone up, and I have the numbers with me now, from $60 million to $72 million in the 8 years since the same format of reporting has existed, from 2012 to 2020. During that same period, and this is a really important point, during that same period, the Board of Ed's debt was $47 million and is now $12.3 million. Over the last 8 years, the Board of Ed has almost paid off all of its debt. And when they finish in about, 2 or 3 years? When they finish paying off their debt, I believe it's in 2024, I may not have that exactly right, their debt service payments will fall off of the budget and taxes will go down significantly. That is fiscal responsibility. Yes, they're paying more now, but they're doing it so that they can pay debt down and down and down. And I fought hard for that when I was on the Board of Ed. And I didn't really have to fight that hard for it because everyone was on board with that, with paying down debt and being responsible. So the last comment I want to make in terms of the contrast between the Board of Ed and this body, Councilman Pedrosa, you talk about transparency. The Board of Ed has its January meeting, its February meeting, its March, or one of its January, one of its February, one of its March, and one of its April meetings has a budget presentation. The board secretary stands up and gives it anywhere from 10 to 30-minute presentation and details what's, I'll wrap up quickly, what's in and what's out. The board asks questions of him in public, in detail, at all of those meetings, and then the public can come back and come up to the podium and respond to the questions that the Board of Ed asked. And that's all in addition to the official public hearing. The budget is a complete mystery until you guys put it out, and then we get one chance to stand up here and say things. We can't even ask questions because you haven't given your talk about what is in your comments until after we've had our say. It is not transparent. It is not progressive. Thank you.
Name and address again, please.
Howard Teichman, 60 Fairmount Avenue.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I have to say, in response to Mr. Pedroso's comments, I'm disturbed that you display open hostility toward members of the public. And don't say you don't, because anybody listening to what you said before, really inappropriate and disturbing comments that people in the public are confused, maybe you're just not doing the right thing. Has anyone ever thought of that? I've thought of it. And Mr. Kirsch, most of what I was going to say in response to you, Mr. Bruckner said. In respect to the school district, I would just add that part of the reason for the district being able to pay off its debt is that the district has not incurred any new debt, not a single penny, since around 2004, 2005. And I know because I was on the school board. And we built all or part of about 8 different buildings, not roads, but actual buildings. That's why that debt was incurred. With respect to the county has the same zero tax rate increase this year than you do. So that pretty much wraps it up for your attempt to point fingers elsewhere. Your budget is smoke and mirrors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. Bill Gladstone, 25 Linville Lane,
Thank you.
Bridgewater. Mr. Ring and Mr. Kirsch responded to a public comment regarding headcount of personnel. And it was said, I think, by Mr. Kirsch, in 2019, there were 206 full-time staff members and 34 part-time. And then last year, you cut down to 184 full-time and 23 part-time, and 184 and roughly 22. So that didn't, the big change was last year. Okay, 206 to 184. That sounds great, but I think it would be important to know the mean and median of the total salaries of these employees when there were 206 versus 184. From what I've read, there were many, many lower paid workers in Public Works Department, code enforcement let go, and many high salaried people hired, new offices created for these higher salaries. So, let's really make sure it's apples to apples, not just bodies, but what are their salaries? Not only that, how many consultants are now being paid at what cost to do the work that some of the past positions in-house were doing? We had an in-house township engineer, now we outsource to a consultant who has contributed to campaigns. That's important to know. Financial help. I mean, I just see consultants and consultants. So to just say it went from 206 to 184, and that's being fiscally responsible, is not telling the whole picture if you're not talking about all the work that's being done by consultants and the total costs. Mr. Pedrosa also said the increases in the budget are not arbitrary. It's because they are needed. We have a new Office of Constituent Relations. Was that really needed? I understand also there's an assistant, maybe it's a different word, I don't know if it's deputy, but assistant to the head of that new office. Is that really needed in these tough times? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandra Rue, and I'm at 373 Pond Road in Bridgewater. I have a couple of questions. The first is to the mayor, and you mentioned the On Point program. Could you explain a little bit more about the program and how does it, Bridgewater being a pilot for the program, will affect the county? And
Sure. Oh, I'd be happy to.
give us any funds for that program?
Yeah, sure. I won't spend too much time on it because I could talk about it for a while.
You can give me somebody else to kind
Yeah, no. We can talk about it further offline, but the basic idea is there's a program that started in Stafford Township down in Ocean County, where what they did is they partnered with a social worker organization, where, let's say a police officer went to somebody's house. It's the third time they're there. They're there because it's a drunken disorderly, they know there's an alcohol problem in the house. Well, the cops can respond, and they do, and they deal with that situation. But they know that what the person really needs is to get into AA, to get treatment. So what they do is there's a social worker who comes into the police department once a week, and in Stafford Township, I think now it's up to 2 times a week. And the police officers can say, Mr. Social Worker, I was at Mr. Smith's house now for the 3rd time in 3 months. He really needs treatment. And then the social worker can contact Mr. Smith and say, Mr. Smith, would you like to get treatment? Or Mrs. Smith, here's how you can help. And some people turn down that service. Other people will accept it. And what they found is that the recidivism, when you treat the underlying issues, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, any of those things, that at the end of the day, obviously you're being proactive in your community before something gets worse, whether it's drug overdoses, domestic violence, all kinds of issues.
So the call comes into the police department first.
Oh, no, yeah, this is not, a social worker's not answering a call in a live situation. It's a later referral where the police officers handle the police situation. But later on, they say, we've been to Mr. Smith's house, we know this is a problem, it's a mental health issue, it's a substance abuse issue. And at a later time, a social worker would go out either with or without the police department. And so what we've done to try to partner with this is that the county is going to pay for the social worker, or pay, to help run that program. Bridgewater will be the pilot to see how it works here. It won't be the exact same program as Stafford, but it will be similar. And then hopefully, if it's successful here in Bridgewater, we can expand it to other towns in the county.
I'm on a committee which looks into the police, and that was one thing that we heard about, but we didn't know anything about.
Yeah.
We'd asked.
It won't in any way replace, when someone calls 911, you're not getting a social worker by any means, but it's a way of heading off future issues, and Stafford Township has had a great success with it, and we're hoping that, again, the county gets angry at me if I call it On Point because they say it's not the same exact program. I forget what they're calling it. They have a name. I think they're still coming up with a name for it, so I will stop. So if the press is reporting it, don't call it On Point. I'll get an angry phone call from someone at the county. So call it something similar to it, but that's it.
The second point is that I understand that you're going to renovate this room. Last week I was on the call, or last time I was on the call, and virtual people couldn't make comments. It was only listening. So if you renovate the room, take in consideration that the people who are listening to the call may want to say something, so you can update it with the technology, which will allow us to speak. The third thing is, let's see. Oh, one thing about transparency. One of the problems I observed is that, like on the Finance Committee, you don't have anybody not to my knowledge, through the public on your Finance Committee. And perhaps it would become more transparent if you would have a public aspect of the Finance Committee, like they do with like the police compliance committees, for example. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Yeah. Step right up. Hello again.
Kathy Franco, 766 Wemack Road. First, I'd like to thank you all for addressing the hairpin turn on Vossler Avenue. Finally, having lived off this turn for over 30 years, I can attest to the dangers that existed. I find it unfortunate that over 11 years ago, my husband attempted to address this with the township, with the town engineer at the time, who was Bob Bogart, and was told that it was not the township's property to be able to carve it down. Since that time, I personally was rear-ended, and in addition, have responded on numerous occasions as a first responder to accidents at that curb. I'm hoping that this will address that issue. I thank the township for finally addressing this extremely dangerous turn in our town. You're going to be talking about an ordinance tonight regarding an increase in fines to nursing homes for non-ALS calls. In reviewing that ordinance, I now recognize that although this has been on the books since 2003, I do take issue with it. As a background, I am both a licensed nursing home administrator and an EMT who has served in this township. As an LNHA, I've served throughout the state of New Jersey. While in this role, I have maintained contracts for both emergency and non-emergency calls. When reviewing the contracts for these services in the facility I most recently served in, as in an emergency call situation, it would be answered within 45 minutes, 90% of the time. Now, emergency, in their eyes, is a BLS call. So if a person fractured their hip, that call, 90% of the time, would be answered in 45 minutes. Under the ordinance, the way it's written, that call could be fined because it's not an ALS call. Please recognize these contracts were acceptable to both the state of New Jersey and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid during every inspection I ever went through. And I went through numerous inspections in my 30 years of having my license. I therefore wonder why the township at this time is asking for an increase in these fines. Having served on our rescue squad for a number of years, I've never questioned the reason for a call to a nursing home. If someone is a fractured hip, they, according to this ordinance, could be fined and penalized. Nursing home residents are just that. They are residents of the nursing home and residents of this township. Should they or their home be penalized? I question this council on how many times have they levied on nursing homes in the past 18 years since the adoption of this ordinance in 2003 any fines and penalties, because as the treasurer of Martinsville Rescue Squad, I have never received money back from the township for any fines that were levied. And finally, following up on something that Ms. Rue said, as far as transparency, accessibility, first of all, I question why the agenda for tonight's meeting was not made available until very late and well after the close of business on Friday, 7/16, to the public. It was not on the website, it was not available. I also wonder why this meeting is not able to be attended remotely for the purposes of comment and public input. The county successfully is having both remote and in-person meetings. You successfully were able to have remote meetings throughout COVID.
Ms. Franco,
And
you're way over your time. Please just sum up.
I will be done in a moment. There is nothing in the regulation that prevents meetings from being offered with a remote option. I therefore request that the council look into that as an option. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Arcolio, 1110 Washington Valley Road, Bridgewater. I have a question for Mayor Mensch. You mentioned the OnPoint program, I guess is the correct terminology for it. I had noticed since October, the Attorney General of New Jersey, Graywald, has been documenting apparent uses of force by police, and Bridgewater is on the high side. I'm not going to get into any specifics because I'm not an expert at commenting on those details. But I was wondering, do you feel this on-point program would get to the point where cases where mental illness is a case, police respond to mental illness, that a social worker may go with the police or may train the police?
I'll make a point of order. Typically, this portion is for the public to provide a comment and not really for back and forth. I mean, I'm going to let the mayor obviously address your question, but it is, whenever he speaks, it's going to cut into your time. I don't know if you want to give your full statement and then ask your questions and let him answer them, or if you want to just have let him
I'll just have one more.
Whatever you want.
One more topic, and then the mayor can respond. The topic is the sewer budget. I mean, it's kind of more opaque than the rest of the budget. I see a major revenue shortfall. Can you address the commercial decrease in revenues, or is there what difference in revenues on the sewer side were documented during the pandemic? But I'll let you go.
Okay. On the first question, I can't answer, which is right now there is no expectation that at any point in time social workers are providing specific training to police officers. I mean, that may come at some point, or we constantly look at how we train our officers. One of the things that we did last year, which COVID did not enable us to do with the public as much, but we have virtual reality training for our officers so that they can really try to understand how they would react in real life situations to handle any number of topics that could come up. So we're always looking at training. This program is not a training program for police officers. Whether there's a piece of that in the future, I don't know, but it's not. It's intended to be an opportunity to refer those individuals or cases where we can try to find proactive ways of getting folks mental health assistance when they need it before a situation deteriorates and becomes worse.
There seems to be a high percentage of the parent uses of force that were documented.
Yeah, so the data that the state has previously used to try to trash police officers is a bunch of bogus data. So I don't even accept the premise of that question with regard to the data that you're referring to. It's if you're referring to the data that has previously been compiled, it's flawed data. If there's new data out there that Graywall had put out, I haven't seen that in the past few months. But you know, the war on police officers that your party continues to perpetuate is something that
Don't go there. Mayor, please not go- Please do not go there.
It's inappropriate. And but the premise of your question, the premise.
Please don't cut off the mayor.
The
He didn't
premise.
cut you off. Please don't cut him
The
off.
premise of the question suggested that somehow our police department is in some way has a higher or inappropriately high rate of whatever you're referring to. And my comment to you is that I don't believe that the data, and if you can feel free to show it to me, that's fine. But the insinuation that somehow our department is in any way handling cases, handling incidences inappropriately is insulting to me, it's insulting to the community. So if you want to reframe your question, I'm happy to address it in a different way. However, this program is meant to handle proactive mental health issues. It's not meant to address anything else. On the
Link to what the state.
That's fine. The other question with regard, your specific question with regard to commercial rates as affecting the sewer budget, I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. Our CFOs may have it, and if not, they can email it to you. If you guys have the information, you can provide to Mr. Arcolio. John, can you ask your question again on the commercial sewer rates?
There must be a component of commercial charges for sewer taxes that must have gone down if all these office buildings are empty.
I don't think it would. We can get you the information, but with the way that unless you're a very, very big user, let's say a giant campus, okay?
Hillside News has 1,350 employees on 250.
Right, so most businesses are not metered. So they get a flat bill, regardless of whether they're empty or not. It's based off of a unit calculation. So if you're a business and say you're a restaurant and you have so many tables, there's a calculation that says you're going to pay this bill. Same thing with the sewer. It's not usage-based. There are few commercial companies in town that are large enough that they have a meter that you actually, can give an exact number. Those rates will have gone down, I assume. I don't have the data, but we can get it for you, John.
Thank you much.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to address the council?
Move to close public input.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, I think,
Oh,
Snuck in there.
Did we finish the vote? Did we take-
To reopen. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Sorry, I didn't hear the motion.
Councilman Orgaz has withdrawn the motion. I don't think the vote wasn't final, so go
I
ahead.
actually
ma'am.
I wasn't planning on speaking. I came to watch. But I'm a registered Democrat, and I was really proud to see one of our officers inducted today. And from my own personal experience with our police force here, they've come to my family and served and protect us in the most honorable way. So that's all I really got to say.
Thank you. Ma'am, your name and address for the record, please.
Jennifer Lochran, 716 Falcon Court.
Mr. Brooks is going to get mad at me. Thank you. Okay. is
Now
there-
motion to close public input.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none? Public-
Mr. President, if I may make a quick comment, because during the previous portion of the hearing, I was simply quoting numbers that are public record, are available, that our Bridgewater tax levy, 23.83 in calendar 20, calendar 21. However, the total Bridgewater tax rate, which is an aggregation of multiple taxing authorities, went from 210.32 to 211.32, a full penny, also known as 0.47%. My statement was that now that my work is done with our budget, I will certainly double back my efforts on understanding why the total cost of ownership went up if the action taken on this dais did not cause it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Council President, just a few brief remarks to some of the comments made by the public. I know we're going to have plenty of time over the next few months to talk about the shortcomings of the school district's leadership over the past 8 years. But just to comment, there was some comments made about the debt which the school district has. There's a couple comments there. One of which is that most residents, I would think, would prefer to have their money in their pocket and in their 401k accounts and their retirement accounts, given how low the cost of borrowing is right now. I also think that debt is an incredibly useful tool when used appropriately in order to improve facilities, such as school facilities, air conditioning, HVAC units, roofs, baseball fields, all the other facilities that the school district has not seen fit to invest in. So, while it is laudable, if possible, to be debt-free, and in many instances that's certainly a laudable goal, it's not always the financially prudent thing to do. It's also necessary, to comment that the school budget is significantly bigger than ours, which is maybe also why the tax bill that the residents pay to the school district is significantly larger. When the school district raises, and we heard some concerns here about that we're receiving an additional $300,000 through our growth of our tax rateable base. I think the school district's budget, increased this year almost $3 million. If I'm mistaken, then somebody can certainly correct me at some point in time. But so the growth is significant. And so you have to make sure you're comparing apples to apples, which is not being done here. It's nice to pick on the debt, but I think we're certainly proud that we have a low rate on our debt, and we're going to continue to invest in our infrastructure so we don't have problems like we've seen in other places here in Bridgewater. The comment, there was a question about the Office of Constituent Relations, which is always ironic because people always want more, they want more public engagement, yet apparently they don't want us to hire the staff to provide the information to the public or otherwise do that. So I'm not quite sure. It's kind of like Mr. Brookner suggesting we should not use debt, but we should also not raise taxes, but we should also do more roads. You can't do everything. We have a dedicated staff, which we're proud to support, whose only goal is to help residents answer questions, is to provide information to the public, and to do things like run this meeting. We don't have a staff the size of the school district that may have extra employees to help them do these things. So we created a department, and we're proud to do that. The Office of Constituent Relations continues to function at the top of its game. I hope that we're even able to grow it a little bit bigger by the time it's done, because there's a lot of constituent services that need to be done, and we are going to absolutely provide those services to our residents. So in the meantime, I know I don't want to keep this meeting till midnight. I know some of our board members might be used to that, but we try to be more efficient and respectful of our residents' time. So I'm going to wrap up my comments to move it forward. Hopefully, in the meantime, we'll get students back in schools without wearing masks. Those are my comments, Council President.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, if you look at the past 10 years, you compare the Board of Education budget year over year versus this governing body's budget, they've increased taxes much more than we have. I mean, our tax has been practically flat. If you look at a decade, while the Board of Eds has not. So just worth noting. But Mr. Titchman, I just want to just very briefly address something you said, and that is that. Could you, how do you say it? How do you say, I don't want to insult you. How do you say your name? Teichman, I'm sorry, Mr. Teichman. When I commented regarding not understanding the budget, my comment was very specific because frankly, I find it concerning that you have Democrat candidates here, past and present, Democratic past and present candidates that have an obligation to really understand the budget. You know, if they want to run for office and they want to serve the public, and they come here and don't understand the budget, if they don't understand how to read and analyze and make conclusions and interpret a budget, then it's concerning. So my comment was not about the public. My comment was limited specifically to individuals. Once they place themselves as candidates, they have a different obligation to understand the budget that if they wish to serve the residents. And then one of the key things that we do in a governing body really is make budgetary decisions. And so they really have an obligation to understand the budget. So my comments were just limited really to them. It wasn't, I'm not addressing, I don't expect the public to understand the budget at all. I hope that the public will ask us as many questions as they possibly can, and we are happy to answer their questions. Anybody else? No? Okay. So we'll move on to item number 10. Public hearing and final action ordinances. We have 10A, an ordinance amending Chapter 217 entitled Ambulances to modify the terminology used to describe the ambulance services and to modify the penalties for violations. Is there a motion to open?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any member of the public wishing to address ordinance 10A may do so at this time. Comments are limited to ordinance 10A. Seeing none, is there a motion to close and final action?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please. Is there any comments?
I was just going to, I know there was some comments during the open public portion of the meeting relative to this. This is an ordinance, as we discussed last meeting, that was first put on the books in 2003 and has not been touched in 18 years. There's two things that these revisions address. The first one is at the time this ordinance was introduced in 2003, and the intent here is Bridgewater Township has a large number of nursing homes. In the past, there's situations where nursing homes will call 911 because a patient needs to go for blood work or some other kind of routine procedure. It can be taxing on the EMS in the community and make those units not available for life-threatening emergencies. So that was the original intent of this ordinance. At the time this was done, it did not cover the service that the township contracts for daytime coverage to assist the squads that are not in service. And since then, there has been some violations that one of the EMS agencies has reported one facility more than one occasion. It's up to the EMS agencies that respond to report violations to the town. There's been some opportunity there. The intent in raising these violations are not revenue to the town because, in fact, any penalties paid minus township costs are paid to the EMS agency that responded. The intent in raising this is to drive compliance. So, and this ordinance, prior to being introduced, we had several meetings with the EMS agencies in the town and anticipate later this fall there will probably be some further enhancements to this. So that's all.
Thank you for that. All right, there's a motion and a second. Anybody else wish to address the council? If not, we'll do a roll call.
Councilman Park?
Yes.
Councilman Cordero?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Pedrosa?
Yes. We don't have any introduction of ordinances this evening, so moving on to resolutions. 12A, certification of 2020 audit.
Thank you, Council President. This is, as it says, every year we have our budget and our finances audited, and the council has to certify that they've received and reviewed the audit. And like we have in the past several years, we continue to comply and do well on our audit. So no major issues are flagged.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or motion?
I'll just, as Councilman Nogales mentioned in his comments at the beginning of the meeting, once again this year, there's no recommendations or corrective action. My second time on the council doing such, both times there's been no corrective action. I'm happy to move 12A.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Park?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales? Cordero?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Pedrosa?
Yes. 12B, authorization to extend the grace period for the 2021 annual sewer charge from June 1st to August 31st, 2021.
Mr. Council President, that's exactly what it sounds like. Because we just passed the budget today, the sewer bills, people have an extension just in case. Obviously, there's no increase in the sewer cost to residents, but wanted to make sure before we send out a bill.
Thank you, sir.
Move 12D.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Park?
Yes.
Councilman Cordero?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Pedrosa?
Yes.
Mr. President, just a brief question about that for the administration. Now that we've taken action on the budget and the sewer utility, is there an estimate for when those bills will land in mailboxes of our residents?
Very soon.
Terrific.
12C, authorizing the execution of various documents in connection with the Somerset County Improvement Authority Somerset Municipal Bank Program in an amount not to exceed $395,000. Anything you want to add?
There's a resolution F is to finance the acquisition of a number of vehicles for the police department.
Got it. All right.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Councilman Park?
Yes.
Councilman Cordero?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Pedrosa?
Yes. With consent of the council, I'd like to read and perhaps vote on 12D through K. They're all award of contracts. Unless anyone has anything that you'd like to pull, I'll just read all of them, and then we can just vote on them together.
No problem.
No objection.
No objection.
Okay. All right. Sit back and listen. 12D, award of contract to Best Cleaning Services, Inc. For custodial services for the municipal building, police building, public works, and the senior center in an amount of $60,000 for the contract period of August 1st to July 31st, 2022. 12E, authorizing an award of contract to Appraisal Systems, Inc. to perform professional appraisal inspections and related services in connection with the township reassessment program for 2021 in an amount not to exceed $72,961. 12F, award to Gentilini Ford Chevrolet, 500 John South Penn Boulevard in Woodbine, New Jersey, to purchase two 2021 police SUV Interceptors, each fully equipped with the required emergency equipment for a total amount of $91,075. Two 2021 Ford Police Interceptors for Administration Detective Bureau for a total of $67,302. One 2021 Chevrolet Tahoe, fully equipped with required emergency equipment for a total amount of $49,670 to be funded through the Somerset County Improvement Authority Somerset Municipal Bank Program. Awards to Winter Ford, one 2021 Ford F-250 extended cab with utility body, fully equipped, emergency equipment totaling $55,108 to be funded through the Somerset County Improvement Authority Somerset Municipal Bank Program. Award to Vigilant Solutions for two 3-camera mobile plate reader. For two police Ford SUV interceptors listed above, totaling $49,160 to be funded through the Somerset County Improvement Authority Somerset Municipal Bank Program. Award to Island Tech Services for emergency lighting and systems for police Ford SUV interceptors. Chevrolet Tahoe, Ford F-250, and 2 Ford SUV interceptors for administration, Detective Bureau, totaling $77,668 to be funded through the Somerset County Improvement Authority Somerset Municipal Bank Program. 12G, award of contract to ADG Contracting Corp. Trading as Crossroads Paving for the 2021-1 roadway improvement project, entire length of Field Street, Grand Boulevard, Manville Boulevard, Rhea Street, and Woodrow Avenue in the sum of $604,937 funded through the 2021 Capital Fund. 12H, award of contract to ADG Contracting Corp. Trading as Crossroads Paving for the 2021-3 roadway improvement project, entire length of Burning Bush Road, Camelot Drive, Falcon Court, Mountain View Avenue, Red Lion Way, St. George's Road, and Victor Street, which Mountain View Avenue to the Bird Avenue section, in the sum of $1,119,063 funded through the 2021 Capital Fund. 12I, award of contract to CCM Contracting, Inc. for the 2021-4 roadway improvement project, entire lengths of Cambridge Lane, Mark Drive, Murfield Lane, and Tuck Place in the sum of $815,665 funded through the 2021 Capital Fund. 12J, award of contract to Topline Construction Corp. for the 2021-5 roadway improvement project, entire lengths of Cricket Lane, Mallard Drive, Esther Peter Road, and North Caston Avenue, the Route 22 to Somerville Road section, excluding the Route 287 overpass, in the sum of $551,839.52 funded through the 2021 Capital Fund. And 12K, award of contract to CCM Contracting, Inc. for the 2021-6 roadway improvement project, entire lengths of Hammer Road, Cedar Crest Road, Diamond Place, Opal Way, and Redwood Road in the sum of $618,382 funded through the 2021 Capital Fund. Great to see a lot of roads getting fixed. Good job, Mayor. Any comments?
Only brief comments. You saw some of the earlier resolutions or for services that we currently have with regard to the appraisal and the cleaning services. So you have the information there. I checked with Councilman Nogales, who has been a watchdog when it comes to the markings of police cars. I saw this on Friday. I panicked to make sure that we had checked with him, and we had, in fact, met his approval. So I am proud that this resolution appears to be ready to go with Councilman Nogales' approval on the police cars.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All jokes aside, we continue as part of our program. We buy a certain number of police cars every year, usually through the Improvement Authority, their program, to make sure that we always have a fleet of vehicles, so we're not stuck with 1 year having to buy 20 police cars. So that way we know how many are rotating in and out of service every year. And we discuss this with the chief every year to make sure that we're buying the cars that we need, not the cars just because somebody wants them. As I mentioned in my earlier remarks, 5 of the 6 resolutions are here for the roads. As I said before, they all came in under price. We're waiting for the 6th one, so hopefully that will continue the trend. And then we'll have a plan put together, and hopefully at least 1 more, if not 2, additional road packages that we can get out this year. And if we move quickly enough on it, then the construction can also take place this year. If not, then those road projects will be engineered and ready to go, along with other ones for the very beginning of 2022. So more to come on that, but we will keep everybody posted.
Excellent. Comments?
Just a
Questions?
question. I obviously they're gone out to bid. I noticed CCM and ADG have more than 1 project. Do we anticipate they'll still be able to complete? I guess they each have 2. So
yeah.
Will they be able to complete both projects this year? Do we think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So just as a reminder to the council and the public, when we do road bidding, it is it's low bidder. So we don't get to choose the contractors that we work with when it comes to road paving services. Those were the low bidders. And we did make sure our staff talked to both of them because those are not companies that we've done as much work with. So we did want to make sure that they had the capacity to do both, and they say that they do. Certainly our contracts with them and the laws don't let us, we can't just decide to pick a different company anyway, but there are things that we will do to try to make sure that they do everybody, all 6 contractors, when the final one comes in, stick to the schedule. That said, there's always the possibility that one road or somewhere won't get done because of any number of issues.
Yep.
That happens every year, but yes, the answer to your question is we check with them, they've confirmed they can do it.
Thank you. I know we couldn't do anything about it. I was just curious, so thank you.
All right, is there a motion on 12D through 12K?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Crush?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Pedrosa?
Yes. 12L, authorizing change of scope to professional services contract, increasing the contract price by the sum of $9,248 for professional engineering services for the Billion Street, Klein Place, and Martin Street sanitary sewer rehabilitation and restoration project, professional consulting, Inc., from the price of $198,965 to $208,213 funded through the 2017 Capital Sewer Fund. 2017. Administration?
Yeah, just a brief comment on this, and Mr. Pappas can fill in any gaps if I miss something, but this project has been one that has been floundering for some time. This road work was initially approved back in 2017 to do the sewer improvements and then the subsequent road repairs on these 3 roads. It has been, they've hit an incredible amount of difficulties along the way. And so what our engineer has recommended at this time, in order to make sure that this gets moving, is to bifurcate the sanitary sewer rehabilitation project and the drainage and roadway project into 2 separate components, which will allow this to move forward and get both done more efficiently than it's currently happening now. So the change of scope is to address the engineering costs that need to be made in order to address those changes. So Mr. Pappas can add anything on. Okay. That's all I got.
Questions, comments, or motion?
Make a motion to move this.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Crush?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Pedrosa?
Yes. 12M, resolution bypassing the vacation time carryover provisions pursuant to Section 26-31B of the Municipal Code of the Township of Bridgewater and re-extending same from June 30th, 2021 to December 31st, 2021 in consideration of the COVID-19 pandemic and the employees who were unable to utilize their accrued vacation carryover leave as usual.
Mr. Council President, just a brief remark on this. As Council knows, obviously, our employees have a vacation time which they're entitled to. And there's usually rules within which they have to take their time within a certain amount of time, or they might lose some of their days. But what we've seen over the past year is that because of COVID, we had employees who were working because we don't want them on vacations. We don't want them missing in action, so to speak.
Couldn't go anywhere.
What's that?
And couldn't go anywhere.
Well, I couldn't go anywhere either, yeah, some of them. But the reality is that we don't want to penalize these employees as a result of their work during the past year. So this is an extension to allow them to use those, give them extra time to use their vacation days, which they're entitled to, without forfeiting them. And the expectation to be is that this is not a recurring, not to be every year we're doing this, but that this is an extraordinary circumstance, and we shouldn't penalize our employees.
Thank you.
Mr. President, this is the second year we're doing this. I sincerely hope that the employees will have the opportunity to take this vacation time so they can personally spend time with their quality time with their family and rest up. So I hope this is the last year that we have to do this. But
yeah, we don't anticipate that this is going to be a yearly occurrence, and we've made sure the employees understand that they're entitled to the day. We don't want to penalize them, but they do have to. Usually lose a policy, and for some of the days, then they have to do that.
with that in mind, I'll move 12M.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Crush?
Yes.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Pedrosa?
Yes. 12N, award of contract to Rainer Pump Systems of 53 West Highway 206, Stanhope, New Jersey, for the purchase and installation of a Sulzer-ABS, oh boy. I guess that's the unit number, dry pit submersible pump for the Joe Bride Sanitary Sewer Pump Station in an amount of $51,390 funded through the 21-13 Sewer Bond Ordinance. Anything administration have?
Mr. Council President, it's exactly what it sounds like. We're purchasing a pump for the sanitary sewer pump station. And that's what this is.
If I can, Mr. President?
Yes.
Mr. Pappas and I took a tour of this pumping station a number of weeks back, and I thank him for coordinating that. We were 50 feet below ground, looking at the multiple pumps there. And this is, in effect, almost an emergency transaction because the pump that it's replacing is out of service. And the last thing we want to have happen, as I reported on, one of my council reports several months back, is a situation where residents can't flush their toilets or take a shower. It's a very important thing. So with that in mind, I would move 12N for adoption. Did I leave anything out, Mr. Pappas?
You covered it.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. President, just a quick question before we vote.
Go ahead.
Would we classify this as proactively necessary?
Absolutely necessary. When you have a pump that doesn't work, you want to replace it. This was the standby pump that does not work.
But to me, the operative word here is proactive before we have a disaster.
Pumps are, if your pump is working in good order to capacity, you don't replace it. You might repack it or something. It's like your sump pump. If your sump pump is working, you don't rush to replace it. But if it doesn't work, you want to make sure you replace it. This is a very sophisticated, very large pump and needs to be replaced.
Did you guys vote on it? Did you guys vote
We
on
did
it?
not vote yet. Is there a second?
I moved it.
I know.
Alan seconded it.
Okay,
Alan
great. Roll
seconded
call,
it.
please.
Councilman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Abdullah?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Pedrosa?
Yes. Item 13 would be closed session. Do we need a closed session today? We do not? I believe so, no. Great. So we're moving on to item 14, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you everyone for coming and for your comments. Have a good night.
Hello, Roman.
How are you, sir? How's the fam? No, August 12th, I think it is. It's the next meeting.
They wanted a little more time. They have that last provision they had some thoughts on. So they'll get a 30-day added room. So they'll get an item for the month of August. Yeah. And Clerk and I have discussed this. It'll go through. So their license is good now until August 31st, the last day of August. And I expect action one way or another in the month of August. So. Yep. There's a little bit more that they wanted, and they had some thoughts, and I thought were good. So we'll have a draft of them probably next week in August. Will be.
You sound disappointed when you asked.
Every parent understands.
Yeah.
Yeah, they opened the door.
Yeah. It would take an earthquake not to have something. Nobody got hurt. And they could get just another 30 days if they wanted to, and we're not going to oppose them. So.
You gotta keep your readers on a cliffhanger. It's better than guys. You know?
And when we
Readers on a cliffhanger. It's better. You have to come back and check.
How did they do? How did Jackson?
Now, there was one person asked, could you understand anything? Nah, I didn't
I didn't understand a word.
But what they did is they give us.
Oh, yeah.
How did Jackson do for his?
Terrific. Thank you very much. I took notes.
Thank you.
No, I thought it was.
I think I was putting my words.
You know,
I would have changed it.